Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another video. In this video, I wanted to talk about Real Madrid's chances of winning, specifically La Liga. I'm pushing the UCL aside, I'm pushing the Copa del Rey aside, I'm pushing the Supercopa aside because La Liga is where it's at, and that kind of explains how you are doing as a club. So, for example, we see Barcelona last season and they excelled in the league besides the little downhill that they had. And then we saw that they won the domestic treble. When, as you look in Real Madrid's league last season, and you see at some point they were 15 points clear, and then there was, a lot of people could speculate a lot of things, but then they ended up losing that lead and then finish off second place, which is not the worst, but for a team to lose 15 points, you start questioning yourself, right? So the focus would be about La Liga, and I could have talked about millions of things that has to go right for Real Madrid next season in order to win La Liga. I am not an expert, but what I did want to say is only three things. I just wanted to talk about three things that Real Madrid has to focus on in order to see success next season, specifically in La Liga. The first thing I wanted to talk about, which I've talked about plenty of times, is that defensive lineup that Real Madrid has. If Real Madrid can't sustain these defenders, when I'm saying maintain, when I say Real Madrid maintaining, right, I'm not only talking about Xabi Alonso, I'm also talking about the medical team, right? Last season, like I said, 2 ACLs we suffered in that back line. Besides the tactical view, I'm talking by the players, right? Specifically Militao and Alaba, and we overused Rudiger, and we, used Lucas Vasquez as a right back. We had Asensio, right? We used an academy player, right, which is rare from Real Madrid because I don't know why Perez decides to just sign players instead of relying on the academy players, where Asensio filled in that role and helped out Real Madrid last season, at the very least, to secure that second spot in La Liga. If Real Madrid can hold this defensive lineup together, that will be a very, very, very important role into Real Madrid's success, especially defensively for the league next season. As we all know, Rudiger, right, he had to go under surgery because he was taking painkillers for I don't know, I think it was 9 months. So he used painkillers for 9 months in order to keep playing for Real Madrid and in order to be there and to help out Real Madrid. And, as we saw in the Club World Cup, he made mistakes. I don't know if it's because of his body being tired and I don't know, it could be anything. But yeah, so basically Rudiger's time is basically, I'd say, almost up. And it's important for Real Madrid to, not speaking even about Real Madrid, it is important for Xabi Alonso to rotate these players, these defenders. It's very, very, very important to rotate. For example, last season, Ancelotti, how many times has he changed Vasquez, right? I think it's less than 5 games where he put Valverde instead of Vasquez. How many times has he switched out Rudiger, right? I only remember the last couple of games last season, right, where Rudiger had to go under surgery and he had to bring in academy players. So it's very important for Xabi Alonso to rotate these players to avoid the main thing that's been haunting Real Madrid, specifically defenders, which is injuries. With that being said, you have Dean Huijsen, you have Alaba, you have Militao, and you have Rudiger. I believe those are the 4 key defenders. So it's very important to switch between them and rotate these players around, because with the increase of games, right, especially last season, everybody's been complaining, Real Madrid cannot take the chance of playing these players over and over and over again. I heard that there's rumors that Real Madrid wanted Konate, but I think that they've stopped progressing with that, and I think they're going to try for next year, and that's fine by me. I feel like we're set in terms of our center backs and fullbacks, but I hope and I wish that if, God forbid, something were to happen, rely on the academy players, right? I know they're not as best as the professional players who've had experience, But you never know if you could pull another Asensio. Like Asensio has saved us many, many, many of times and proved he is worthy to start with the main team. So if we're being honest, Real Madrid is not winning La Liga if they don't fully lock in that back line. Yeah, Real Madrid has made smart moves. For example, they signed Dean Huijsen, who's been incredible in the Club World Cup. Especially him being young and confident, it's very important to have that center back playing for Real Madrid. With the signing of Trent, a lot of people don't want to give him credit for not being the best defensive right back or full back, but let's be honest, that's an incredible signing for any team to have. And Real Madrid landed Trent and Dean Huijsen, which were huge for the back line because they add two things, which is creativity and stability. One more injury to Militao or Alaba, and we're back to the same panic mode as last season under Ancelotti. It is very important for Xabi Alonso to rotate these players so that we don't get into this panic mode like last season, where we were forced to use an academy player because Perez didn't want to sign any players. It could either go right or wrong. But in order to not take that risk, it's very important for Real Madrid to rotate these players and to give players resting time and other players playing time so that no player is being rusted on the bench. If we want to lift that La Liga trophy, we need the defense to be deep, healthy, and ready. Not just for one game, but I'm talking about week in and week out. We don't want none of that makeshift lineups, and we don't want none of that chaos. It is important to lock in this season because this season will tell us everything. And that was the first point that I did want to make because it's very important that the defensive lineup is structured and has a system, because this is going to affect my next point, which is the midfield control. Now that we have Modric and Kroos gone, they kind of faded away from us. We don't have that calmness in the midfield that, ultimately Kroos is the one who had that. And Modric, before he was reaching that old age, he had that as well. At some point, Real Madrid did want to sign a midfielder. However, they didn't. And I think recently Perez said that he's done making signings. And I feel like that's not the right move, if I'm being honest. I think there are still more players that he could sign, especially to back up that midfield, with Bellingham now being gone for 12 weeks, I believe. And there are reports where Real Madrid want to bring in Rodri, right? I know there was a controversy with Rodri and winning the Ballon d'Or against Vinicius, which is a Real Madrid player, and the way he celebrated and everything. But yeah, he would be a great addition to the team. I'm not sure how great, but he would be a great addition. I heard that Enzo Fernandez Real Madrid wanted, but I don't know if these deals are going to go through. But like I said, we need that controlling midfield. And with Kroos missing and Modric missing, I don't think that Ceballos, most likely, and Arda Güler alone are going to control that midfield, because you need more than that. You need a system, right? And if the midfield doesn't have anybody else to rely on, it's not just one player controlling the midfield. You need a bunch of midfielders controlling that midfield area. So it's very important, right? Midfield is key. And Alonso, he wants that top-class midfielder that holds that tempo and holds that control like Kroos once did. And if I'm being completely honest, if Real Madrid don't land a signing in the midfield, I can't predict it's going to go 100% wrong, but I can't predict that it's going to be 100% right. I think it all is going to come down to how Xabi Alonso plays his midfield. So yeah, speaking about Real Madrid's midfield, I believe that area is the make or break to winning La Liga next season. Kroos is gone and Modric is gone. And right now, our best midfield controllers, most likely, are Arda and Ceballos, which they are both solid, if I'm being completely honest, especially Arda Güler. They are both solid. But if I'm being completely honest, neither of them ran the midfield the same way Kroos did. Alonso, reportedly, he did say this, that he wants a true tempo setter, somebody who sets the tempo. And with Bellingham now out 12 weeks, reportedly 12 weeks, if we don't land a proper midfielder like a Kroos or like a Modric, we might see the same problems as last season. right? And what I mean by problem is a chaotic midfield that either gets overrun or bypassed easily. Most likely, Mbappé, Vinny up top with Bellingham, right? You are most likely going to need somebody that feeds them. And it can't be Arda Güler all the time, and I don't think that's Ceballos all the time either. We can't rely on the attackers to play isolation ball. That is not going to work, especially with today's football. I think that if Real Madrid are not getting anybody from the academy, Perez, don't hesitate. You have to make a proper signing for that midfield. And that is one of the most important points that I did want to make, is that midfield, because some people see Real Madrid as now being completely set. But most of the fans know that if you look at that midfield deeply, you know that there's something missing. You just know that there is something missing, especially if you look back at when Cruz was in the team, and now last season when he was not in the team, there was something huge missing, right? And to me, it was that tempo controlling midfielder. The last point I did want to talk about was Real Madrid's system and their chemistry altogether, especially up front, where that's where the issue kind of lands. At some point, Xabi Alonso, when he did come to the team, he made great progress in the Club World Cup. Reaching the semifinals is not easy. And he did that with the Real Madrid team that some of them were on international duties, and he only had a couple of players that he practiced with, that attended training and worked with them. So Xabi Alonso did great with that. Something that Real Madrid needs for next season is not just great players, because last season that did not work, but they also need a system. And not just any system, a system that is proper, that has an identity, and that doesn't switch up every single time. Because if we look back last season, right, Ancelotti kind of did more of an experiment, right, with changing these formations, putting in these players, right, never changing up front, but always with these formations, right, changing up these formations and seeing what works, what doesn't. And I think that that's something that has to happen outside of the games, right, maybe in training, all right? So Xabi Alonso, I'm sure he's been doing this, taking the time and see what probably works for this team. Especially now there are talks about Vinny and Mbappé playing together and possibly Rodrigo leaving, and how you're going to incorporate Bellingham into this and the role of Arda Güler. Bellingham is going to be the one pushing up front. So there has to be a proper system and a proper formation so that not just us fans could be confused, but I'm sure that it's not easy to hold down multiple formation and multiple tactics and multiple strategies with the players. I don't think it's that easy for them to do and for them to memorize. There should be only one identity to this team, and Xabi Alonso has to work on that. And that identity should not be something that is simple, because just having one identity doesn't mean it has to be something simple, and it doesn't involve change, right? I'm talking about when you change identities every single week from a team, it's not going to be the same as when you have one identity that has that change within the same identity. It's hard to explain, but for example, Barcelona, right? They had one identity, right? If I tell you to tell me their formation, it's 4-2-3-1. That's their formation. And if I ask you Real Madrid's formation last season, I bet you I'm going to get different responses, right? So formation matters, strategies matters, and the way those two work together is having this team having one identity. For example, Barcelona, no matter what, they still had that identity of the offside trap. Barcelona, no matter what, they still had Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, Robin Lewandowski, Dani Olmo, Pedri, all contributing to goals and assists. They had a structured defense, and that's something Real Madrid didn't have. They didn't have none of that last season, none of that. So yeah, including me, myself, everybody is hyped that Xabi Alonso is managing Real Madrid. And to be honest, yeah, I get it. But here's what really matters the most. Can he give this team a system before the season starts? Like I mentioned a bunch of times, last year, Ancelotti kept changing these formations every single week, or maybe every other week, right? I'm sure you guys remember, one day it would be 4-4-2 diamond. Next week, it would be a false 9 chaos. There was no proper identity to this team and no rhythm at all. There was nothing at all. And now when you look at the team, we've got stars in every single area, every single position. You have Mbappé, you have Vinny, you have Bellingham, you have Trent, you have Dean Huijsen, you have Arda Güler. And if Rodrigo doesn't leave, we have Rodrigo. That's a lot of stars in one team. But if there's no tactical blueprint, the stars mean nothing. I believe that preseason starts July 31st, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe sometime in August. That's the moment that Real Madrid has to lock in the formation, build chemistry, and start playing like a unit. Not just 11 players or 11 star players playing together. They have to play as a unit. La Liga is won in details, not just Clásicos. If Madrid starts the season still experimenting and still unsure who is going to play, we'll drop points early and the title is going to slip away from us. So if I'm being honest, Xabi, it's on you. You have to build the system and, very importantly, define the identity. Because if I'm being completely honest, this year, there are no more excuses. And that is the truth. There are no more excuses for Real Madrid, Xabi Alonso, and for us fans. You have to be honest with yourself. Last season, a lot of excuses. I'm not saying any excuses, but this season, I guarantee you there should not be any excuses because Xabi Alonso knows what to do with this team. And everybody's been saying it. This season is a determining factor. So it's all up to Xabi Alonso and to see what he's going to do. I'm excited for this season, and I can't wait to see how Real Madrid are going to do in La Liga and if they're going to win. If Real Madrid starts off strong, I have a good feeling, but if not, then I'm not sure what's going to happen. But let me know if anybody's out there watching. Let me know what you think in the comments and what's your take on Real Madrid for next season in La Liga. And I'll be responding like always. And until next time, Salam alaikum.